my apologies. And but it'll be good for you in the end, and better for everybody like that. So if you have any problems, come and see me. Makeups, come and see me after class. All right. And I'm at my office after this class, usually on the 6th floor of MHB. We're talking about this romantic period of Islamic history. We're talking about the Caliphate. What are the Orthodox Caliphate known as? The right-guided Caliphate. The right-guided Caliph. What's the term in Arabic? Khulafa al-Rashidin. Khulafa al-Rashidin. Yeah, that's plural. I told you, plurals in Arabic are different than singles. Right-guided caliphs, according to the Sunni viewpoint. That is Abu Bakr, Omar, Uthman, and Ali. So you say to me, Ali is one of the right-guided caliphs. What are the Shiites complaining about? Oh, they're complaining about the fact that you don't give him enough credit, enough stature, enough aggrandizement. They're complaining about the fact that Ali was the proper caliph, the legitimate caliph from the beginning, and you stole it from him. So they have a grievance right from the get-go. Now I told you, Shia, this is Sunni, based on Ijma, as I told you. What's Ijma? Consensus. And this is Shia. And Shia means party. Not house party, not Halloween party, but a group of, followers of, party of Ali. The party supporting Ali's claims. That's what Shia means. Shia means the party of Ali. Who is Ali? Well, we never really heard much about him, except that he was the Prophet's first cousin, the son of Abu Talib, who was the Prophet's protector after his own father died. And he married the Prophet's only surviving daughter, Fatima. That's what we know about, you should know at this point. Okay, so Omar is assassinated. But the conquering doesn't stop. The fleet is built. Because now Uthman comes in, and Uthman, people like Muawiyah, who are in Syria, and Amr ibn al-As, who are in Egypt, are basically servitors of the Umayyad clan. And the Umayyad clan is the principal Quraysh clan, part of the Quraysh tribe. So you have a problem between tribe and, I've got it wrong, it should be this way. So you have a problem between tribe and clan. Tribes are made up of clans are made up of septs. That's the way they go. Now, so the, good, you got some chocolate for me? No, I'm just kidding. No, that's all right. I'd love some, but I can't have it at the moment. I'll take some after the class. If you got any left there. So, clans are made up of septs, and tribes are made up of clans. The Umayyad are a clan of the Quraysh. The Banu Hashim, as many of you realize, the sons of Hashim are the Prophet's clan, a minor clan within the Hashim, within the Quraysh grouping. Now, Uthman is then the only Umayyad clan member who was an early Muslim. So obviously they push him forward as the next caliphate after Omar's assassination. And, you know, he is pious, he does care about Islam, he does compile the Koran, but he's considered to, the people beneath him, like the Bushies today, are considered to be corrupt. I don't know if the Bushies are corrupt or not, but that's the way the newspapers portray them, and the Democrats, and everyone who's after poor Scooter Libby and so on, that these people are all nepotism and so on. So I don't want to get in where they are or not, but anyway, the accusation is that they're corrupt. Tom DeLay and so on, people like that. Just about every politician I know is corrupt, so I mean, I don't want to blame left or right on that. But in any case, I don't want to say someone isn't, but the Uthman is considered, not him, the people under him are showing favoritism to the former Meccan aristocracy. And of course the Bush are the former American aristocracy. That makes sense to draw that parallel. Papa Bush runs the old skull and bones aristocracy and CIA connected groups. It's a good comparison, though I like Junior better than Papa, I gotta say that. Junior seems more of a natural person, not the same kind of snob his father was. Even if his father was maybe better better statesman, still Junior to me seems more honestly what he is. So I can't dislike him as much as I dislike his dad, for the reasons that his dad never went out in the world and used all his connections to get ahead. In any event, Uthman is has this kind of accusations made against him, and there's probably truth to it. In the meantime, the Muslim armies are conquering North Africa with some setbacks. So they're fighting the Berbers mostly in North Africa, and there's some swing back and forth. They get to Morocco in time, and there's some reverses. They found the city in Tunis of Kairouan, which means caravan basically, and it's still there in Tunis, halfway across North Africa to this day. These are camp cities, Kairouan. And in southern Iraq, other camp cities are founded in the Omar style that we may, Kufa and Basra in southern Iraq. Basra is still there today, causing trouble. These are camp cities where Muslim soldiers settled in these places, and Omar's policy was they should not mix with the local population, so they should not be corrupted. This is not the policy of the Uthman group after him, but that's how Omar had seen it. In any event, the final campaigns are initiated against Cyprus, as I told you. So Muawiyah's letter to Omar, which seems to have sparked his assassination, saying Cyprus is so close you can hear the chickens cracking and the roosters crowing or whatever. Or no, it's the dogs barking and the roosters crowing. You can hear the dogs barking and the roosters crowing. That's an exaggeration. Cyprus is around 500 miles off the Lebanese shore, but you know, we know what he's talking about. And Omar didn't want the Arabs to go to sea. But under Uthman, these things moved forward under Umayyad commanders. And a big battle is fought off of the present-day Turkish, then Byzantine coastline, called the Battle of the Mass, as I told you about. I think it's 656. And then a party of disillusioned people go and assassinate Uthman. The Muslims win that battle with the Byzantine navy. The Byzantines have tried to come back. By the way, after the original conquest that I forgot to mention, I should mention it, the Byzantines do reform after Khalid ibn al-Walid's initial successes, and they come back and they fight a big battle at what's called the Yarmouk River. It's called the Battle of the Yarmouk. Now, I'm going backwards in time, I apologize. This would be about 638 or so, where they finally defeat the Byzantines at the Battle of the Yarmouk. Yarmouk, if you've been in this part of the world, how many have been in this part of the world? The border between Jordan and Syria is the Yarmouk River, and the Yarmouk River flows down into the Sea of Galilee. So it's also the border today between Israel and Jordan and Syria and Israel and so on. It's a place where everything comes together there at this Yarmouk River that flows down from the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee into the Sea of Galilee. I know the Yarmouk. And anyway, somewhere above the Yarmouk, this battle was fought, and Khalid is the commander. See, I know it's not Khalid, so it's Khalid. You know, the accents help you pronounce the words. Anyway, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Now that Walid, that would be that. Walid, Khalid, Walid. Yeah.
Who's Muwaya again?
Well, we'll get it. We'll get it. Anyway, so Khalid, we're talking about Khalid at the moment. Khalid, the story goes about this battle that he waited until the Byzantine army, whether it was sunset or sunrise, I don't know, but waited till the sun set or sun rose in the eyes of the Byzantine army, where they were positioned on the battlefield, and then he attacked, and he had an overwhelming military victory again over the Byzantines. And that was the final battle in Syria, Palestine, the Yarmouk. The Byzantines came back to Egypt, but in 640 some more battles were fought there, and 644, 645 the Byzantine navy was defeated. So there's a lot of conquering and battles going on at this time, but the Muslims were generally victorious. The other column that was going into Iran, Persia at this time, also reformed itself after Khalid came east. And they were successful at a battle called and it's really funny. The whole, at that time, I think the dynasty in Persia, were called the Sassanids. So, yeah, I think it was the Sassanids. But anyway, I may be wrong. Anyway. The whole Persian Empire or dynasty collapsed in this one battle at Qadisiyah, somewhere in between present-day Iraq and Persia. And when Saddam, by the way, was fighting the Gulf War, he had on one of his missiles Qadisiyah, you know, to commemorate the defeat of the Persian armies back in the days of the Muslim commanders. That battle would have been around maybe 638 or 9, somewhere in there. So a whole, two empires basically collapsed in front of the Arab assault between 636 and 640. You know, the Persian Empire just melted away. And the Byzantine Empire reformed, but north of the mountains that separate Asia Minor from Syria. There are mountains there, as you may or may not know. And very difficult terrain along that inland coastal region, and that's where the cutoff was. And that area was fought over then between Byzantines and Arabs for another 300 or 400 years. The Crusaders even went in there and took places along that area by those mountains in northern Syria. And until finally the Turks came and drove everybody out and made the whole area part of Turkey. I'll explain how the Turks came presently in due course. But that was basically the border area between the Byzantine Empire and the Arabs ever after, those mountains in northern Syria. Even though the Arabs did make several assaults on Constantinople by sea. Anyway, this Battle of the Masts in 656 was the last serious battle in all these things. So the Persians had already fallen. Most of the area south of those mountains in Syria had already fallen. A group of people disconnected themselves from these. From the army, and for some reason blamed Uthman for various malfeasances, and went back, maybe even some involvement in the assassination of Omar earlier. And in fact, you see, these seem to be parties of different partisans of these different people, because some of these people were the son of Omar and others like that. And they went down and they went to Medina and they assassinated Uthman, the legend has it, while he was reading the Koran. 656, everything is in turmoil. And this is where we come into the story of Ali. Now Ali, his partisans say he wasn't in Medina at the time Uthman was assassinated. But others didn't agree. Others blamed Ali for some of this. Whether he was to blame or not, it isn't clear, but Ali's supporters in Medina immediately proclaimed him caliph. So on Uthman's assassination, Ali was finally proclaimed caliph after waiting 30 years or so for this situation. Yeah, what?
He was proclaimed what?
Caliph.
Caliph, okay.
Caliph.
Khalifa?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
One's Arabic, one's English. He was finally named Khalifa, if you want the Arabic. Caliph in English, Khalifa in Arabic. Anyway, successor. He was contained, but it's a religious, political office by this time. Not just a pope, but also military commander and so on. Well, successor to the prophet, whatever he was, that's what the caliph was. It's called the caliphate, this period. So Ali was proclaimed caliph in 656 by his supporters. But the previous group didn't approve again. Not just the Umayyads, but the Omar Abu Bakr party. So there's a story that goes around about Ali. As much as he won, he always lost. Ali in Islam, and in many ways, for Shiites even today, is the beautiful loser. For Shiites, he's considered the paragon of Islamic virtue, all knightly chivalry, all perfection, all goodness. But on the other hand, he's not really long for this world in terms of political maneuvering. And as soon as he seems to succeed, he fails. The first thing that happens to him immediately is in the Arabian Peninsula proper, he has to fight for his caliphate. And he has to fight people like Omar's son, Abdullah ibn Omar, Abu Bakr's descendants, in particular Aisha, who was Abu Bakr's daughter, who claimed some status as the previous favorite wife of the Prophet and so on. And he has to fight these people near Medina in a place called the Battle of the Camel. Not a place, but a site. The Battle of the Camel. I think this is also in 656 right away, or 657. I'll just put 656 to 57. Why is it called the Battle of the Camel? Because in the middle of the battle, it was said that Aisha came out and encouraged the troops against Ali, and they always had a grudge. They always had a grudge. Because way, way back, 30 years before, it was Ali who was one of the accusers of Aisha for being unfaithful to the Prophet when she was being taken to a camp to meet him and so on with her escort and so on. So they always had this bad feeling, apparently. In any case, Ali is victorious in this battle with Omar's descendants and with Abu Bakr's party and the previous group who had been caliphs before Uthman. So it looks like he's fine, right? He's got everything sorted out. These people, Aisha, he doesn't kill them. He puts her under house arrest for the rest of her life. And she keeps her pension and things, but she's not able to cause any more trouble. I don't know about the fate of the others. I would have to look into the Muslim historians more carefully. But at this moment, Muawiyah, I told you we'd get to Muawiyah. Muawiyah is the governor of Syria. He is the son of who? Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And who's Abu Sufyan? The former head of the Meccan aristocracy, the Umayyad principal clan of the Quraysh tribe. Basically, the governor of Mecca in the old days. This is his son now, who came north with his older brother Yazid when his older brother was killed, now a grown man. governor of Syria, where the Umayyads entrenched themselves out of Arabia proper. Medina is totally Muslim, but these provinces are more Arab in a way. And so you see why the Umayyad Caliphate that will now grow on Muawiyah's shoulders, the center is Damascus, not Mecca. And Damascus is where Arab hopes have always been centered, even today. So when we're having trouble in Damascus today, it's Arabs, it's the Arab ideal of Damascus. Medina is not the Arab ideal, it's the Muslim ideal. The Arab ideal is going to be Damascus and Spain and places like that. We have to separate Arabism from Islamism. And Arabism goes older than Islamism, and I've showed you the roots of Arabism, which is a different thing. Now, even Arabs themselves are unaware of these things. They don't understand half of this because it's so mixed in their brain and in their culture and in their behavior. But from outside, we can see the different strains come from different sources. Islam is not the same as Arabism, and Arabism is not the same as Islam. And the Umayyads represent Arab aristocracy. Ali and others represent Islamic aristocracy. Okay. In Damascus, Muawiyah, in Friday prayer, the story goes, hangs out what's called the bloody shirt of Uthman. It's a proverbial thing in Arabic now. Hanging out the bloody shirt of Uthman. Hanging out the bloody shirt of Uthman. I don't know if I have to write that on the board, but since you guys seem to like things written on the board, I'll write it on the board. Write it for the TV audience, right?
That's right.
Okay. Hanging out the bloody shirt of Uthman. This is what Muawiyah did. By doing that, what's he doing? He's asking for justice. He wants proper retribution. He wants justice for the killing. He wants vengeance on the murderers of Uthman. He wants vengeance for Uthman. Why does he want vengeance for Uthman? Uthman's a member of his clan. He's basically, Muawiyah is now basically what happened in Lebanon recently? The prime minister was blown up in a car. And now his son is Rafiq Hariri, and now the son's name is, what's the son's name? I don't know. Anyway, he wants justice for his father, right? And the Syrians are being called to account in the UN and so on. It's the same thing. On the son devolves the leadership. If you look at the Kurds in northern Iraq, there's a guy called Barzani, who's one of the Kurdish leaders. He's the son of the famous Kurdish military guerrilla leader called Barzani as well. It always devolves, these clans in the Middle East always devolve on the oldest son. For instance, in Lebanon, there are the Druze. And there was a guy called Kemal Jumblat, who was the leader of the Druze in Lebanon. He was assassinated. Now his son is called Walid Jumblat, and he leads the Druze in Lebanon. It's all over the Arab world like this. The son succeeds and takes vengeance for the father and so on. It's still going on today. And that's what people don't realize when they're bringing democracy into the Middle East, which I'm all for. I'm maybe not democracy, but I'm for constitutions. I believe people need and deserve and must have a constitution to avoid situations of being bully boys and bad courts and being threatened and stuff like that. Whether it's a pure democracy doesn't matter as such, because the clans and the religious affiliations will always be very, very strong. Right? You're saying yes, and that's true. The Constitution is the key, not so much the democracy. The Constitution that people actually pay attention to and observe. However you want to run your society, write it up in your Constitution and follow it. But have a Constitution. That's the beauty of what happened in America, that we had virtual geniuses, really. I mean, you have to admit that. I don't come from America. I come from someplace in Central Europe or someplace. My forebears. I'm sure your forebears come from God knows where too. But we all come here and we come in under the Constitution. I just appointed an Italian chap to be Supreme Court potential justice. Father didn't even speak English. He's now going to be on the U.S. Supreme Court. What's his name? Alito or something. He's going to defend the Constitution. That's what he's going to be called upon to do. Does he care about the Constitution? He's from Italy. Yeah, he cares about the Constitution. He's always cared about the Constitution, apparently. Not whether I agree with him or not doesn't matter. I'm sure that he cares about the Constitution. So that's what makes you an American. That you agree to the Constitution, you come under the Constitution, you obey the Constitution, you put the Constitution above your religious affiliation. Because when it comes to push comes to shove, it's not the Pope in Rome that tells you what to do. It's the U.S. Constitution. And if you think it's the Pope in Rome, then maybe you'd better go live in Rome. Because it isn't America, it's the Constitution that tells. And it's not Bin Laden that tells you what to do here, it's the Constitution. Now the Constitution may be flawed, so go change it. But the Constitution is what tells you what to do, and that's the way it works here. So I think that's good for any country. But you must see that these Arab things are very strong, and Muawiyah is hanging out the bloody shirt of Uthman because he is the representative of the Umayyad clan. Now you know who Muawiyah is. And he, demands justice for his relative. And what is he implying? Where is the justice not being done? In Medina. And who's not done it? Ali. And who may be guilty or complicit or implicitly complicit in the murder of Uthman? Ali. And that's what Muawiyah is claiming. And so that's war. So I said, Ali never wins, but he loses. He lost always to get the caliphate. When he's elected caliph, he has to fight Aisha and Abdullah ibn Umar and their group. Now, he's no sooner settled, who does he have to fight? Muawiyah and his group. The big battle occurs up in Syria. The battle is called Siffin. I think it's around 657 or 658. Let's just make it, I'm not sure what the date is. Didn't go on throughout, I'm just not sure exactly the date. Somewhere in there. It's in northern Syria. The two armies are there. Now, the victors write the history, let's face it. The defeated don't get to write the history usually, except in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I work on. There, the defeated wrote the history and stuck it in caves, and now we have to deal with it. So, in fact, in things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, the defeated do get a chance to actually write the history. So this is Siffin. And according to the historians, and I don't believe them, but this is what they say. Ali was just upon the point of winning after 6 days of struggle and battle. But at that point, Muawiyah, guided by the old fox, the servitor of the Umayyad family, sort of like Brent Scowcroft, for instance, or James Baker, or servitors of the Bush family, always pop up whenever you don't want them to be, meddling in the affairs of state and other places behind the scenes. When Junior is doing bad, they take him to the woodshed and then give him a spanking for the dad. In any case, these servitors of the family, Amr ibn al-As pops up. The old fox, the one who got Egypt, who disobeyed Omar back then and went into Egypt. He was governor of Egypt and got rich from the corruption there. Now he's Muawiyah's advisor at the Battle of Siffin. And whoever comes up with the idea, here are these people who are lukewarm Muslims, the last people to come into Islam, people who were never supporters of the Prophet, people who fought against the Prophet. The story goes they put Korans on their lances and came out to the battlefield. All romantic history. What's the symbolism of that? The symbolism of that is that they're asking for arbitration according to the Koran. In other words, they're going to pious Muslims and saying, we want this adjudicated on the basis of the Koran, which is ludicrous for a really believing Muslim to entertain, because these are bad Muslims to begin with. But here's where Ali's nobility, according to the histories and the stories, take him or make him fall into a trap. Because Ali is such a paragon of virtue, so perfect, so good, so decent, that once he sees the Koran on the lances, he can do nothing but agree to arbitration, even though if he had continued the battle, according to the historians, he would have won. Now, again, I don't know if that's true history, or if that's pro-Ali propaganda. But that's the story that has come down through the Muslim historians, that Ali was so good that he agreed to this. Now, maybe the battle was a stalemate. Maybe, in fact, they didn't, one side wasn't, they were just wearing each other out, and then they decided to arbitrate on the basis of the Koran. But according to the historians, they all tricked Ali, that they were about to lose, and then that's when they wanted the Koran. And once they made the Koran the issue of the problem, then Ali had to agree. So the battle ceases, and both parties agree to arbitration. Now here's the next thing that shows Ali's fairness but stupidness, according to the observers, the decency, nobility, but lack of self-interest. Ali appoints a neutral. It's like appointing someone to the Supreme Court now. You know, who are you going to appoint to the Supreme Court? Ali appoints a neutral person to represent him at the arbitration. I don't know the person's name. Muawiyah, guess who Muawiyah appoints? Amr ibn al-As. So Muawiyah does not appoint a neutral person, but his old fox, his old advisor. And Amr is going to sort this thing out to Muawiyah's advantage. The arbitration doesn't take place till the next year. It's, I don't know, 658 or 659, I'm not sure exactly the dates there. And it takes place in Jericho. But before the arbitration takes place, you know, the war stops for the time being, see who's got the right on their side. Once again, Ali has problems in his own camp. Again, he never wins, but he loses. Who are the troublemakers in his own camp now this time? The people who object to the arbitration. The people who say that he had no right to agree to arbitration. These people are known in Arabic as Harajis. Haraja means to go out. They're the people who went out, who disagreed and went out from the camp. So Ali has to fight again. The Harajis continue for 3 or 4 centuries as a protest group, sort of like a bin Laden group. Very much like a bin Laden group. So these trends in modern Islam are already there in the classical period. They say that, according to Islam, you're not permitted to make war on fellow Muslims. But they say that in their war against Ali now, that Ali apostated himself from Islam by agreeing to arbitrate with bad Muslims. Well, that could be bin Laden out in Afghanistan today. This is like, I don't, Frank, you see, you know the history, it's all there. It just recurs in more modern form. So these Harajis are in the camp, and it's a very severe situation that he has to deal with, and it's a very bloody one too. But he, again, Ali prevails over the Harajis. But the Harajis, the refugees take off to the outer parts of the empire, and they survive in these outer parts for several centuries thereafter. And if you want to know, they're still surviving in Islam today, but in the situation we're watching. The ones who protest, who say that all you other Muslims, basically your Uncle Tom Muslims, you agree with the Westerners, you go along with their ways, you know, you've apostated yourselves from Islam, therefore we can kill you. That's just what the Harajis were saying back at the time of Ali. You asked me about the sects, and we're going to deal with Shiism. Are you getting a picture of how the sex developed? That's what we're doing. Not sex, S-E-X, but sex, S-E-C-T-S. Okay, so the arbitration then occurs. And the decision, guided by Armour, who's a very important figure you see in all this, is that both sides agree to depose their leaders from their offices. But that's ridiculous for Ali. I mean, Muawiyah has no status at all anyway. And Ali is deposed as caliph by this arbitration. So, I mean, he loses the caliphate, basically. And Muawiyah had nothing to lose by such an arbitration. So, in any case, it's a very bad result for Ali. It doesn't help Muawiyah to any extent, but doesn't hurt him. And 2 years later, in 661, Ali is assassinated by a disenchanted, guess who? Haraji, who had lost his brother or father or relatives in the fighting with Ali and took vengeance on him for the loss of his family members. And he was assassinated somewhere in what's modern Iraq. There are two holy cities there. One is Karbala, and the other is, I can't remember the name now. There's been a lot of fighting there, and Shiite mosque there. Anyway, that's the town outside of which Ali is assassinated, the second one, not Karbala, but the other town. I can't remember. It'll come to my mind here, the name of it. In any event, the story is a romantic one, that Ali's body is put on, slung onto the back of his camel, and the camel is let go into the desert. And where the camel stopped, or the body slid off, that's where they built this shrine. And that's now the Mosque of Ali in Iraq, in this town. I'm trying to, any of you Shiites remember the town that I'm talking about in Iraq? Any Shiites in the room who can tell me? The U.S. Army was in there recently and had a lot of trouble there, and then pulled out. They were being stoned, and everything was being thrown at them. Not long before, when after the first Gulf War, Saddam went in there with his tanks and actually not blew up the mosque, but fired at the mosque where they were all inside the Mosque of Ali there. It'll come to me, the name of this town in Iraq. But it's still there today, and it's still a Shiite holy site. And the grave of Ali is there. All these Shiite shrines are in southern Iraq, south of Baghdad. These are things, you know, if you were a U.S. Army and go in with this kind of awareness and cultural perspective, it could help you a bit.
Basra?
Huh?
Basra?
No, not Basra. That's further south. That's one of the camp cities of Oman. But this other town is just Najaf. You see, it came back to me. I'm not dead yet. Almost, but not quite. Najaf. That's where Ali is buried, and it's in the news. His son will be buried at this other place, Karbala, which we'll hear about. That's in the news too. These are all Shiite shrines in southern Iraq. Shiites are never going to give up southern Iraq to anybody. I mean, Saddam can brutalize them and do whatever he wants to them. He didn't treat them as bad as he treated the Kurds. See, I'm not against the Americans going into Iraq, because frankly, no one else was going to help sort that situation out, and you just would keep on having people being bloodied and brutalized. The problem is now that people are being brutalized are the American soldiers. No one seems to appreciate that. And it's pretty sad that the people who went in there didn't foresee what was going on. And I saw on the paper today that the new government there now wants to reinstate Saddam's military officers in the army as a way of undermining the insurgency, so they feel part of the establishment rather than having no pension, no salary, and being out there preparing these roadside bombs. And the person who went into Iraq and disbanded the Iraqi army, it should have his head examined. I mean, all those guys wanted was their salary. That's all they want. That's all anyone ever wants. Their benefits, you know what people want, their medical benefits, their pensions, everything. Give them their salaries. Give them the medical pensions. Bring them into the new Iraqi army. As long as they're not like total murderers and everything. They're just doing their job. They're soldiers. Whoever disbanded the army and thought they could train a new one in that maelstrom is an insane person. And, you know, they didn't send me out there. I'd have sorted that situation out for them in 2 ticks. But, you know, I'm sitting here in Cal State and they sent out the most dumbest people that God could ever have imagined. And got 2,000 American soldiers killed for nothing. American soldiers shouldn't be patrolling the streets out there. Iraqis could have done the thing from the beginning. If they hadn't disbanded the army. And it's just totally insane, totally insane. I'm not against the invasion, but it's the way it was conducted afterwards is the conduct of complete ignoramuses. I don't blame them for being stupid, they're just bone stupid. It's not that they're doing wrong, it's that they're stupid. Pardon me, okay? You know, a situation, I hate to tell you, I could have solved it with the click of my fingers, you know, but some idiots, and this is what happens. You make the wrong political decision and, you know, 1,000, 1,500 American soldiers have to pay the price for it. What are American soldiers doing driving up and down hostile streets? I don't know. There's no need for it. There's no hostility in the Kurdish areas. There's no hostility in the Shiite areas. There's no need for them to be driving up. There's only 2 provinces that they get any casualties in. That's because they disbanded the Iraqi army there. And if they had the Iraqi army paying their salaries, they would have taken care of the whole thing. So the whole thing is ludicrous and absurd and sad, and I feel sorry for the American people. Not that they didn't have didn't have the best intentions, just they're being served by guys who don't have any brain. They didn't go to Cal State Long Beach, you guys. They didn't take our Islam course. It was taking our Islam course that had been fine. All you guys, you go into the Rhodesia or government, or you women who do this, tell them you took the course here and you can sort it all out for them and stop all the nonsense. Okay, let's go back to what we're talking about. So Najaf is where he's buried. It's a Shiite shrine to this day. Well, with his burial and disappearance from the scene ended the 4 right-guided caliphs. What happens at that point? Guess what? Muawiyah's partisans then immediately proclaimed him caliph. So the arbitration at Jericho didn't achieve anything except Ali's demise. So there it is. Ali is the beautiful loser in Islam. And ever afterwards, what is the cry in Islam? Vengeance for Ali, vengeance for Hussein. What do Shiites want vengeance for? I don't know. They were badly done by in the struggle. Now they're going to take vengeance on the whole world because of this. And that's I don't know if you've seen these processions that they and they're hitting each other with they're hitting their own hands at one time. I apologize. This belt keeps on loosening. It's one of these stretch belts. The more you tighten it, the more it loosens. So you see my pants are falling down. You understand why? Yeah, right. Have you seen those processions in Shiite areas where they're flagellating themselves? Well, that's because it's a vengeance to suffer. And that animosity is directed against the whole world. It's not directed against any particular thing. It's a feeling of being badly done by. Vengeance for Ali. Vengeance for Hussein. Vengeance for Ali. And this is a very deep strain in Shiite thinking that people who don't understand Shiism don't understand what's involved here. And, you know, I mean, I'm seeing nothing new in the present that I didn't see in the past. That's why Islamic studies courses by good teachers, like myself, should be incumbent on all people. An Islamic studies course by a mediocre teacher is okay, but it doesn't really maybe get you where you need to go, but it's better than nothing, put it that way. I'll rest my case on that point, even for the Muslims in the room who may not like me. I don't think it's a bad presentation to get these points under your control. You may not agree with my position, I understand that. But I still think it's helpful to anyone to know these things, whatever side you are on. Okay, so Muawiyah takes over, and this is the beginning of a new period. What we call the Umayyad Caliphate. This is not the right-guided Caliphate of the Sunnis. This is the Umayyad Caliphate. With the center, guess where? In Damascus. How long does it go? Well, actually, it goes from 661. It only survives till about 747 or 50 in the Syrian-Iraq area before a new caliphate succeeds it, called the Abbasids. We'll get to them shortly. But in the meantime, Spain has been conquered. And the conquest of Spain that took off from North Africa is achieved under the Umayyad caliphs. And with the destruction of the Umayyad Caliphate in the east, some of the refugees pop up back in Spain and started up again back in Spain, and the Umayyad Caliphate continues in Spain for another 300 years. So though the Umayyad Caliphate is quashed in Damascus in the 750s, it continues in Spain till the 1050s. So it continues, basically the whole Umayyad Caliphate went on for 400 years, whether in Damascus or later in Spain. So it's a 400-year caliphate, but only 100 effective years in the Middle East. The other 300 years were in Spain, where it's very effective until the Christian reconquest of Spain that I'll talk to you about in due course. I intend to cover all the history here up to the modern period. Yes, my questioner. You are my questioner.
What year was it again? In 61?
Yeah. Anyway, I should give you a private tape, and then you wouldn't have any problems in this stuff. Let me go on here. So, the only reason I get testy at all is because it interrupts my train of thought, and then I don't know what I was proceeding to next. It isn't that I'm against the question, it's that if you're a teacher and you're got the Holy Spirit going in you, and then and you're on a roll, and then someone says, boom, it's gone. You know, ideas are like that. It's like the muses. They're only there, and people who think, oh, we're not answering my question. It's only because, you know, you're on a roll. It's like being a musician playing and saying, wait, can you stop that chord, you know? and then the guy, you want the guy to resume, and he can't. He can't, because he's lost whatever it was that was in his mind or her mind to proceed. So sometimes these questions are good for you, but bad for the lecturer. So if the lecturer sometimes is testy, it's only because he or she is annoyed at being woken up from a good dream where the material was flowing in a rational way, and you're like, no, it's gone. You know, I have to pick up the sense, but I don't know where I am. That's what the question does. But anyway, let's go back. So, if I can. So this Umayyad Caliphate exists for that length of time. And Muawiyah is a very successful caliph. He puts down all the opposition. He basically reigns to about 680, and he does not get assassinated. He does not get assassinated. And he's very successful. But what we have in Damascus is what's really called an Arab kingship. It's really, these are not good Muslims. Muawiyah was never a good Muslim, and the Umayyads are never considered good Muslims. They're good Arabs, is what they are. And we read about the Arab virtues in our earlier part of this class. Arabs like gambling, horse racing, falconry, hunting, all the things a pious Muslim really is supposed to abjure to some extent. So these are what the Umayyads liked. And they liked good art, they liked luxury, they liked hunting, they liked falcons, they liked racing, they liked animals. You know, they were just Arab chieftain, Bedouin chieftain, with all the preferences that a Bedouin chieftain leader would like, but not good Muslims. And never really considered good Muslims, which is why the Umayyads are more or less forgotten in the history of Islam, but remembered by Arabs. Arabs always say, oh, the Umayyad Caliph, the glory days of the Arabs in Damascus. And if you read or see that, how many saw the movie Lawrence of Arabia? What's he trying to do in that movie? Or it's a picture. Get to where? Damascus, to restore what? The Arab Caliphate. Does bin Laden want to restore the Arab Caliphate? No. What's he want? The Islamic Caliphate. He wants all the Islamic people. The Lawrence of Arabia, he's only interested in the Arab Caliphate, the Umayyad Caliphate, the Damascus Caliphate. So the Umayyads are really like good Arab kings, bad Muslims. They're Muslim, but they're not good Muslims in terms of what a pious Muslim would perceive to be a good Muslim. So, under Muawiyah, things recoalesce. The rest of North Africa is conquered. A few invasions of Byzantium are occurred. The Muslim armies go all the way to Iran, not under Muawiyah, but at one of his successors. By 710, the Muslim armies reach the borders of India. And by 710, they've reached the borders of Morocco totally. Everything is under control. So the Muslim empire under the Umayyads stretches from Morocco to India. That's a very big expansion in a very short period of time, isn't it? And the fact of the matter is, they don't really have the communications or the logistics to keep it up in any real way. All that is supposed to be run out of Damascus. So Damascus is the not Medina anymore. That's where the Muslims are. That's where Ali's family are. You know, they're down there in Medina, but Damascus is the administrative center of the Umayyad Caliphate. Am I making sense to you guys? Okay. So when Muawiyah dies, and I don't have a lot of information to give you about his reign, but he was a successful reign. A successful reign means there's no information. Everything is running smoothly. And the things are, there's no more, no more protests, no more civil strife, no more, it's there beneath the surface, but it's not out in the open. This is another example in history that's really weird. If the Shiites, if Ali's family had waited 3 years, they probably would have been successful and the whole history of Islam would have changed. But what happened was, when Muawiyah died, his son Yazid, he has a son called Yazid. Who's that son named after, obviously? The brother that was killed in the original campaign. He has a son called Yazid. He takes over, but Muawiyah has lived so long that Yazid doesn't survive very long. And he only survives 3 years. He dies in 683. But there's the rub. There's the rub. The moment Muawiyah dies, all of his enemies come out of the woodwork, including the enemies in Ali's family. And what happens is, Ali's son, Hussein, decides when Muawiyah dies to oppose Yazid's caliphate. Now, you see, if he had waited 3 more years, when Yazid died, he probably would, Yazid didn't have any offspring. And he would have been probably in a much more favorable position, and he probably would have won. But at this point, it's not yet the right moment for him. And he tries, and he loses and is killed. This is a story as well of the bad luck of Ali's family and their descendants. This is known in the history of Shiism anyway. The Sunnis don't care about any of this. They don't like Ali's family, and they don't commemorate any of this. This is only Shiites who commemorate this now. This is called the martyrdom of Hussein. You can spell Hussein many different ways. I like to spell it with 2 S's. Some spell it with 1. There were 2 sons of Ali by Muhammad's daughter, remember? Hassan and Hussein. Hassan and Hussein. Hassan, notice in Jordan today, all the kings are named like that. Hassan, Hussein, and so on. They keep this family connection with the Prophet very strong. They call themselves Hashemites because they claim to be descendants of the Prophet, though they're not Shia. In any event, Hassan was the older, and he was considered fairly corpulent and not phlegmatic and not very interested in revolutionary things. He had been pensioned off by the Umayyads and lived a comfortable life in Medina, like Aisha and others who had been troublemakers. But the younger one was a more fiery temperament, Hussein. And at the death of Muawiyah, he was encouraged by his supporters to make a bid for the caliphate. Hassan didn't try, but Hussein did. All these people are considered to be imams by Shiites. There's Ali, there's Hassan, there's Hussein, and so on. They're all imams. Imam for Shiite is their version of the successor, but now an imam has supernatural powers. It's more like a Christ. More like a Christ. Christ in the Greco-Roman terminology. In the sectarian Christian groups, the Christ was considered, the Gnostic groups particularly, to move from person to person and to be reincarnated in people. It was sort of like a Buddha idea. And Buddhism was strong here in these areas. You notice how the bin Laden or the previous government in Afghanistan blew up the Buddhas in Afghanistan. There are huge Buddhist statues in Afghanistan. The Bamiyan place there, they're trying to restore those, but whether I'll ever be able to, I don't know. Some Japanese financiers, because the Japanese are Buddhists, I read in the paper the other day, are going to make a light show there to restore these statues with light, whatever light sort of shine, some light reconstruction. I don't know, some modern sort of thing to have a light reconstruction of what was there, because they're offended by the fact they blew up Buddhist statues there in Afghanistan. Yeah, so the Imam, the Christ, are ideas that are sort of very close to the Buddha in Buddhism. The idea of reincarnated in different people. And in the sectarian Judaistic groups, Judeo-Christian groups that I mentioned, once again we go back to the secret Adam or hidden Adam idea. Sometimes we call, according to the Ebionites, the primal Adam. And again, they have the same idea that Adam was incarnated. And you see, if you read the letter to the Corinthians, first letter to the Corinthians, if you read chapter 15 and 16, you'll see that Paul knows the idea of the hidden first primal Adam idea. He said, and the first Adam was born of the flesh, but the second Adam, meaning Jesus, was born of the Spirit. And so on and so forth. So, and he goes all on about the first Adam was of the earth, the second Adam was of the Spirit, and so on and so forth. And in Islam, of course, Adam is the person created without any mother and father. Jesus is the second Adam in the sense that he didn't have a father. He had a mother, but didn't have a father, according to Islam. But in any case, this primal Adam is not far from what the Imam means. Literally, Imam means to stand in front of. In the traditional Islam, it's the prayer leader on the Friday who stands in front of the congregants who are praying in unison behind him. It's the person who stands in front. But I think, in fact, it owes a lot to these primal Adam, Buddhist, and other influences that have been coming through here through Gnosticism earlier. So, Ali's family are the Imams, and they get reincarnated in each new generation. They are kind of supernatural in the sense that they are reincarnated. Ali becomes like the Imam, like the Adam, like the primal Adam, reincarnated, like the Buddha. That's why Orthodox Muslims don't consider Shiite Muslims to be Islam. They don't like it. They think it smacks of other influences, and maybe it does. But anyway, the pretense is it's a family caliphate based on the descent from Ali. Okay, so Hussein, the legend is another really interesting legend called Perfidious Kufa. Now, we are dealing in southern Iraq with American and British troops where Kufa is. Kufa is more out in the Arabian desert, close to the Saudi border than Basra, but it still is in Iraq today. And the thing is that these were all Shiite areas back then. These were all Shiite sympathizing areas back then. And the legend is that they invited Ali to come north, where he was in Medina, and that they would support him against Muawiyah's son Yazid. And in 680, Ali did so. Hussein was. They invited Hussein to come north. And in 680, Hussein did that. And apparently he had, 70 family members. It sounds like the 70 elders in Judaism, the 70 apostles. In any case, he went north with 72 people, the same number as the Jews always talk about going up on Sinai with Moses. There are definitely connections there. The commemoration of Hussein's death is the 10th, the Ashura, and of course Yom Kippur in Judaism is on the 10th day of the first month. So there's a lot of melting back and forth. I can't trace it all for you. But there's a lot of cultural interaction going on here, which is happening beneath the surface. The Muslims won't acknowledge any of it, but that's not, I can't, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That no believer ever acknowledges anything that's before their time anyhow. So that's normal. But in any case, there's something going on here. But he comes north, and the reason Perfidious, Kufa is called Perfidious is, the legend is that they didn't support him sufficiently. Be that as it may, the Umayyad police catch him outside of this town that we now call Karbala in southern Iraq, or Iraq south of Baghdad. Baghdad didn't exist at that time. And they catch him as they're coming out of the desert at Karbala, and everyone in his party is killed, including Hussein. And that's the whole thing in Shiism, a second martyr, Hussein. And his tomb is in Karbala. And that is a mosque that Saddam really did attack in the wake of the First Gulf War and bombarded it with tanks and cannon. And the American government let that happen. The American government let that happen, which I thought was a tremendously guilty thing on the part of the American government. They took the surrender of Saddam. I'm not criticizing as part of this course, just telling you what happened, you may not remember. They took the surrender of Saddam after the Gulf War, but they didn't follow it up, which got us into the present predicament we're in now. And then when Saddam took vengeance on all the people who had opposed him, they didn't do anything to help them. And the idiots who made the peace arrangements let Saddam keep all his helicopter gunships. So he used all these helicopter gunships to destroy all these people who the American government was hoping was going to rise up against Saddam. And he mowed them all down and killed literally thousands upon thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, while the American government just stood by and didn't do a thing. Finally, they made a no-fly zone because they realized how guilty they were, and they didn't want to get involved again, so they had planes flying over and said, you can't fly over past this area. But the guys who were in the tent there, the big fat guy with the hand grenades on his chest, Mr. Hotshot, whoever he was, you know the one, the big general there, what was his name? Well, not his fault, he was just following instructions from Colin Powell, who was following instructions from James Baker, who was following instructions from Papa Bush, or who was taking instructions from the Saudis, who didn't want the destruction of the Saddam regime, just wanted to have his wrist slapped. But they didn't want a Shiite-controlled Iraq, so they didn't want Saddam to fall. This all comes from the Saudis. But whatever it was, the point was, what's the general of the First Gulf War? Yeah, Schwarzkopf. He sat in his tent and he made this agreement. Oh, I have an agreement. And he left it with all his helicopter gunships, and therefore he destroyed all of his enemies. You know, and one of the places was this mosque at Karbala, which is a Shiite holy site. Next time, the end of the Umayyads, the conquest of Spain, the beginning of the Abbasids, and onwards and onwards. See you then. With a little commentary on the side from the fool here. Oh, that's in Galatians chapter 4.